Hi, everyone. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Angie Rupert, and I am an E2 visa attorney. I help businesses and individuals who want to come to the United States to start new businesses. So it's a pleasure to be here. And with that, let us move to the next slide. So we're talking about the two most common visas that folks for British nationals who want to start businesses here in the United States will probably choose one of these two. These are the most common, E2s and L1s. So to start, we have a tweet that came out last night from our dear president. As I actually pull this up, I realize that not everyone here probably has a Revolutionary War knowledge, considering that was kind of an American, although I guess British event anyway, but the tweet heard round the world. So last night, President Trump tweeted that he will be temporarily suspending all immigration to the United States. Whether that actually happens or not, I guess we will see, but I just wanted to go over a few points that everybody should consider. Right now, it's just a tweet. There is no executive order, there is no law, there is no anything. It was a tweet at this point. It was also incredibly vague. There are no details as to who, what, when, why, how, etc. Also, he has attempted to do kind of sweeping immigration reforms in the past, and usually those are met within 24 hours of challenges, litigation, that type of thing. Those tend to last months and months and even years. So even if everything goes according to his plan, it will likely be months or years from now. And he may not be president. I guess we shall see. Also, the United States law typically dissuades from general and sweeping executive orders. So they must be narrowly tailored. Anything else could really be struck down. The tweet seems to indicate that his concern is helping Americans get jobs, but that's exactly what you do. So there's a possibility that even if it goes through, it wouldn't affect you. And there are a few new developments this morning, still very vague and very unknown, that this may be more about green cards and work visas. The E2 and the L1 new office do not fit into either category. The E2 visa is an investor visa, and the L1 is similar. There is, I guess, some argument that that can be considered a work visa, but the E2 really isn't. There may be exemptions for certain types of immigration as well. And in fact, I would think that that would have to be probably mandated. And then, creating jobs and injecting the economy with money are two of the things that the United States is really, really interested in right now. So keep that in mind. And an article in The Guardian today, quoting the Wall Street Journal, says that the order isn't expected to substantially alter U.S. policy because at the moment, sorry about that. This is the glories of working from home, right? The cat can join at any time. As of this morning, they're saying it isn't expected to substantially alter U.S. policy because the consulates and embassies are actually closed to interviews, which has already been happening since, I believe, March 20th. So it really doesn't change anything. It may just push it another month or two where, however, the embassies and consulates are still not giving any kind of dates. Even as of yesterday, they weren't giving dates back. So it's just kind of an unknown at this time, but it doesn't look that it's going to be as substantial as he made it seem. He's really kind of pandering to his base right now. So anyway, with that out of the way, I just kind of wanted to give you a little information. Let's start talking about the visas. So the first visa we're going to talk about today is the E2 visa. E2 visas are for citizens of treaty countries, of which the UK is one. This visa is for people who are investing in a business in the United States or who will work for a business that is majority owned by citizens of a treaty country. Note that in the case of an employee coming to the US on an E2, the original business, so this would be likely the UK business, must be majority owned by UK citizens. So if the UK business will be owning the US business, we have to trace back the ownership of that UK business. So when should you think about the E2 visa? Maybe for an employee who hasn't worked in the home country business for 1 year within the last 3 years. So maybe you have a relatively new hire, maybe somebody who's been with you 6 months, or maybe somebody who's brand new to the UK company, and you think that maybe they would be a great fit coming over and starting an E2 business. US businesses that have no UK-based affiliate, subsidiary, or branch. So if you're thinking, hey, I think that, maybe in the next year or so, we're going to actually close the UK branch and we're going to be just having the US branch, and that's going to be our main focus, the E2 could be great for that. Businesses that may have only a few employees, businesses that may not make a profit within a year or two, so maybe a longer ramp-up period. Those will all be great options for the E2 visa. So let's talk a little bit about requirements. This is for investors. So this would be usually, investors can be an individual. So if an individual owns the US company, then that would be fine. Or if a UK business owns the US company, the nationality, the ultimate owners of the US business must be citizens of the UK. Not 100%, note that 50% is okay. But 51% is better. It's just easier to show control. There must be a substantial investment. There is no minimum amount. There's nothing in writing that will ever tell you the minimum amount you need to invest. But at the London Embassy in particular, we know that for an individual investor, they want to see a minimum of about $100,000. For someone who is sending over an employee to start the business, they want to see probably $150,000 to $200,000 already invested. The U.S. company must not be marginal. So you need to show a business plan that shows that the company will be able to support U.S. employees. And the business must be real and active. So it must not be speculative. This is probably not going to be an issue with this group. Speculative businesses would be something like, oh, I bought a bunch of stock in a company. That's not really a business. It's not really offering a service. Oh, I bought this duplex and I'm renting it out. That's not really a business. But with this group, I don't anticipate that would be much of an issue. So let's talk a little bit about nationality. So in the case of an investor, a single investor, it'll be easy. Show your passport. In the case of if a UK company owns the US company, we need to see the passports of the owner of that UK company. If the UK company is owned by other companies, right? So we need to go back to the ultimate, so we may have to trace it back a few steps. And if the UK company is publicly traded and owns the US company, then we gather evidence to show that the majority of the owners are UK citizens, which is usually done because we would say, it's traded within the UK. So ownership, we must show UK ownership. We know that. 50% ownership is okay, but 51% is better. So that would be something to consider when we talk about business structure, right? So for H2 visas, as we mentioned, there's also going to be a substantial investment. Funds or other capital assets must be at risk. So the E2 visa is based on risk. That's really what they want to see, because they want to see, hey, this crew has skin in the game here. They're not going to let this US business fail because they're going to lose all their money. What person or what company would do that? We want to see that they've got skin in the game. They know they're going to be successful. They're going to work hard to be successful in the US. So the money must be irrevocably committed. They do not want signed contracts. This is a big question. Hey, we have a lease for $2,000 a month on an office and we prepaid the first 2 months of the lease. That's great. So you now have an investment of $4,000. You do not have an investment of $24,000 for the year of the lease. They only care about what has been paid before you apply. So keep that in mind. You can show money in escrow. Usually that only works if you're buying a business because you're going to be hard pressed to find vendors that will put money in escrow and wait on a visa. It can be done, but it's kind of a niche area and it has to be very specific and particular. And it's advised that the client has already given some sort of deposit or payment that can't be returned, even in the case of escrow. So marginality, another requirement. Usually what they want to see here is that this business is going to be able to support US employees and their families. So the way that is done in new businesses is typically through a business plan. And the business plan is going to have projections for 5 years of profits and revenues, that type of thing, and also an employee plan. So they want to see how many people are you going to hire in year 1, how many people are you going to hire in year 2, et cetera, et cetera. Usually, there are no minimum number of employees that are required for the E2 visa, but usually I recommend that you have at least 1 U.S. employee at the time of application. That's just for regular investors, meaning, hey, I invested in this business and I'm going to come over and run this business. In the case where you're going to be sending over employees, you may want to have more U.S. employees. So maybe you have 2 or 3, and then you send over a UK employee to train, manage, et cetera, which we'll get into in a moment. Again, none of this is written down. It just helps to prove the requirement beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what I like to do. That way we don't have to be up at night worrying about if this is going to be approved or not, because that worry always exists. So let's take out all of the kind of, all of the requirements that we don't overprove. Let's do the best we can, and then we can sleep a little bit easier at night. Real and operating. Again, I don't think that's going to be a problem with this group, but the business must not be speculative. It must be operational or nearly operational. What I typically like to do is show that there's something already signed and going at the time of the application. Maybe that's a letter of intent or a memorandum of understanding. Maybe there are a couple of contracts signed. Maybe you've already made a couple of sales, something like that. So let's talk about the employees, right? So in order to come over as an E2 executive or supervising employee, this is what the government's going to be looking at. Obviously, the employee's passport, it must match the ultimate owner's passport of the US business. In this case, I presume that everybody will have a UK passport. The employee's title and place in the company's organizational structure. Titles don't mean a whole lot, especially if there's going to be 1 or 2 employees and you're the senior VP of, whatever. That doesn't mean much because there's only 2 employees, but it could help. The duties of the position. So they really want to see that you have kind of an executive or supervisory element as the focus. This is what you're going to mostly be doing. The degree of control and responsibility for the overall operations. So there, can you hire people? Can you fire people? Can you make marketing decisions? Can you make other management decisions? That type of thing. The number and the skill levels of the employees the applicant will supervise. So are they going to be supervising, a bunch of interns? Or are they going to be supervising a lot of managers and directors? And maybe there's 30 of them and that type of thing. The level of pay for the employee. So, if they're going to be paid $36,000 a year or something, may be difficult to show that this is the senior VP of marketing, right? And then, of course, the work experience of the applicant, of the employee. They need to show that they would obviously have the ability to successfully operate in that position. So let's talk about E2 essential employees. So essential employees, the government's going to look to make sure that the employee possesses the specialized skills and the skills are needed by the US enterprise. So to show that the employee has the skills, the government's going to be looking at the following: experience and training necessary to achieve the skills, uniqueness of the skills, availability of US workers that have such skills. This is truly going to be important now more than in the past. There is an executive order called Buy American, Hire American that has been in place since 2017, I believe. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the salary of the applicant and the degree of expertise and the job description within the US company. So similar. However, training, and this is what I hear a lot from new businesses that want to send employees over, is to say, hey, we're going to be sending over someone, they're going to be training all of the US employees, they're going to be hiring new US employees, and eventually they're going to leave when everybody's kind of up and running. So this is a great category for the essential employees. So what you consider regular workers, so people that are maybe not specially skilled, they don't have some special group of skills pertaining to this business or pertaining to some industry, but they can qualify if they are needed for a startup or training purposes for a new business. So in this case, the new business or an established business expanding into a new field, right? So even if you already have a U.S. business established, but maybe it's small and maybe you're going to be expanding into some kind of new area and you need to send someone over that work as well. The employees derive their essentiality with the familiarity of the overseas operation rather than nature of their skills. So, hey, they've been with us for 5 years. They know exactly how we operate. They know how we do things. They underwent, you know, they went through this training. Now they're going to be doing the exact same training for U.S. employees, that kind of thing. Time frame is really important for essential employees in particular. So usually the Department of State notices that essential skills might be really important for a certain time frame, but not indefinitely, right? So the E2 visa is for investors, and for some employees is renewable indefinitely. Usually it's every 5 years for a UK passport holder, so every 5 years for the next 30 years, 40 years, however long the applicant and the business qualify, they can renew forever and ever, but not necessarily the case with essential employees. So it could be that this training that someone's coming over to do is going to last 1 to 2 years, right? A relatively short period of time. So the visa would be issued for that time frame, and then that would probably be it. If needed to be renewed, we'd have to really convince them, hey, you know, we did do a bunch of hiring. Now we're going to do even more hiring, and this person is still needed for this time period because of X, Y, and Z. So we'll also, obviously the government's going to consider the time needed to onboard the employee, et cetera. If we're training a bunch of people and it takes 3 weeks to train them, that's much different than, hey, we're actually training the US CEO. This person is going to be here as a US employee. You know, they are doing a lot of learning about this and learning about that. They're brand new to this business, this industry, that type of thing. So that's that. So again, we're back to the Buy American, Hire American. That was an executive order that Donald Trump put into play in, I believe it was 2017. What that means is that all visas have to be viewed in light of the fact that are there Americans that could do this? Now there are certain work visas, which this is not, that is, you know, you have to file certain documents to show that you've tried to find employees and things like that. That is not this. This is just kind of an overall mindset that must be, that the officers must have while they're reviewing your documents. So the more specific in particular this person, this employee is, and the job description is, and the company is, the better shot that you have. Also, this is one of the reasons that I always say you should definitely, if you're sending over employees, have a few US employees already in place. They may be brand new because they haven't been trained yet, but they've been on payroll for, you know, 2 weeks. This person's coming over and we'll start, you know, training them, that type of thing. It just makes it easier to get over this Buy American, Hire American hurdle. Also, another thing to consider is, remember the same passport rule, right? So whoever ultimately owns this US business, the employee has to have the same passport. So if the UK business sends over an employee with a UK passport, and then the UK business sells some of that company to another person that has a different type of passport, or another company with a different type of passport, that could be a real problem for your employees because now they no longer qualify under the E2. So what is the process for E2s? The client determines the nature of the business and confirms that there is a substantial investment amount available and that they're willing to invest. Then you reach out to me, and then we go over a checklist of documents that will be needed for the process. I set up drop boxes for you, and throughout the document gathering phase, which usually lasts about 3 or 4 months, that's really however long it takes your company or you to get the documents that are needed. We talk every 2 weeks. So you have tons of time to ask questions, get answers, have guidance. You're not just on your own. Once all the documents have been gathered, I will put the application together on this end. It takes us about 2 weeks or so to do that. So we submit all of that information via email to the London Embassy. They usually take about 8 weeks to review. They get back to us and say, hey, we're ready for you to do your interview. Get back on and find a time to set up your interview. You will go to the London Embassy for an interview. Those interviews usually last about 10 to 20 minutes. If you're approved, hopefully, it will usually be done at the interview, and you will get your visa in the mail in about a week or so. From that time, come over, go to work, do your thing. Usually in the UK, for an investor or for a managerial employee, it's going to be approved for 5 years. As mentioned, for essential employees, it may be a little bit shorter, depending on the needs. All right, so that's the E2 visa. Now let's switch over to the L1 visa, another visa that's very common for new businesses here in the United States. So for the L1, the company must have a business in the US and another country that are legally affiliated. So it may not necessarily need to be in the UK. With this, we are not really concerned about the ultimate owners or the passports or the nationalities. What we are concerned with is that this US business is legally affiliated in some way with a business located outside of the United States. So the employee that you'd like to send must have worked in that foreign entity for at least 1 year in the last 3 years. So they need to have some experience and be with you in this foreign business for at least 1 year in the last 3 years. The employee can come to the US as an executive or a specially skilled employee. So the pros here are, in some instances, it can lead to a green card eventually. You also have a lower investment amount up front, but you do need to renew within a year, and you need to show pretty substantial growth within that year. And there are stricter scrutiny by government officials in the last couple of years. You also have a 2 review process versus a 1 review process, which we'll talk about in a minute. So for L1 visas, the new office, which is, I think, what would be the most common thing for the group here. Basically, what you need is an international employee in a managerial, executive, or specialized knowledge may come over and be employed to open a new office. A new office means an organization that has been doing business in the United States for less than a year. So it could be a truly new office, or it could be a new office and we opened it 4 or 5 months ago, that type of thing. So for managers and executives, the company seeking the L status would need to be open or be employed in a new office must prove or show the following: that you have a lease for appropriate office space in the United States. So keep in mind that's going to be appropriate space, right? This is not a WeWork hot desk. You're going to need to have a lease that makes sense for however many employees you feel like you are going to need in the next year. Again, we have to show that the employee was employed for 1 continuous year in the 3-year period preceding the L1 petition in an executive or managerial capacity, that the proposed U.S. employment involves executive or managerial authority over the new U.S. business. Again, you're going to have to show that this person has a lot of authority. They are working independently in their kind of decision making and that type of thing. That doesn't mean that they can't call back and get some advice or, you know, get opinions, but they need to be able to do a lot here. Okay, so the proposed U.S. employment involves, we just read that one, intended U.S. business will support an executive or management position within 1 year. So what does that mean? That means within a year, when you need to renew, you need to show that you need a manager. So does that mean you need 2 employees, 8 employees, 20 employees? Nobody really knows. There's nothing written about that, but I would say the more employees, the better. I would say if you have, again, a senior VP of marketing, and at the end of a year you have 2 employees, not sure that that's going to really justify an executive or managerial position. Also, you need to be able to show that you could pay the person, right? So these are some things to kind of take in mind at renewal. The manager or executive in the new U.S. office must have authority, plans to hire, and you've got to have plans to hire staff. The business plan is really important. It's important in the E2 as well. In the L1, it's really crucial. You've got to have a spectacular business plan. The good news is I have folks that I can kind of direct you to who do great jobs with these business plans. So don't worry, you don't have to write it yourself. All right, so what about a specialized knowledge employee for an L1? Again, you need to show that you have a lease for an appropriate office space, that the company in the United States is legally affiliated with a foreign company. These are the same types of requirements. that they are doing business within 1 year of the initial application, right? Because you'll be renewing after a year, and that the company has a financial ability to remunerate the employee and to commence doing business in the United States. So similar. Let's see. So here we talk about essentially the same things, right? I think I put that one in there twice. So for the new office, sheesh. I don't know what happened here. Here we go. Is this, oh, I hit the wrong button. Yay, that's great. All right, here we go. All right, now we're cooking with gas. So the L1 visas, the time limits. So an L1 visa holder who is going to be specialized knowledge capped at 5 years. Those who are managers or executives capped at 7 years. So what is the process for the L1 visa? The client determines the nature of the business and the employee that is to be sent to the US business, and then reach out to us. And so we'll go over, again, the checklist of documents that are needed, set up the Dropbox, and then during that time, again, we're going to talk every couple of weeks. Once all the documents have been gathered, we put together the application. Now, here's where things get a little bit different. So instead of sending it to the Department of State, which would be directly to the embassy in London, we send it to USCIS, which is under the Department of Homeland Security here in the United States. They review it with no interview. They review it, and they either approve it within 2 weeks if we do premium processing, or they send us an RFE, meaning, hey, we have requests for further evidence. We don't understand this isn't clear, et cetera, et cetera. And then we either answer that RFE, or if approved, USCIS will communicate with the embassy, and then you will be notified of an interview in an embassy. So it is a 2-part process versus the E2, which is just a 1-part process. From there, obviously, we do the same as we did with the E2. We go over a mock interview, likely questions, interview procedure. And then you would go to the interview. And again, you would get your visa within about a week or so. So with that, I would like to take some questions. I believe Jessica said that she will be gathering those. So.
Yes, ma'am, and we do have some questions. I did want to thank you first for all that information. It was so informative and really interesting and easy to digest, especially for people who aren't necessarily experts like myself. So thank you very much. We do have a few questions. The first one being, are there any issues traveling out on an ESTA, spending a few weeks in Irvine, setting up your entity office, and then returning to the UK and applying for an E2 from the UK? The asker had heard that spending a lot of time on the ESTA in the US and then applying for a visa doesn't look great on your application.
No, that's fine. That's what most people do, in fact. What I would recommend is to talk to an attorney first, just based on your current travel. So everybody knows with ESTA, or the visa waiver, which most UK citizens have, you can be here for 90 days without getting a separate visa. You can also come in for business or pleasure. So I would normally recommend that when you come in, you let them know that you are researching an E2 visa. And then the only problem that you should or could run into would be if, hey, I came over from January 1st, I mean, not this year, of course, but in a regular world, in a regular year, I came over January 1st, I left at day 89, I went back to the UK for 3 weeks, then I came back, and I, planning on staying 90 days, you may run into some trouble when you start that type of pattern. Because you're not supposed to be living in the United States or working in the United States. So that's where I would contact an attorney just to say, hey, this has been my travel schedule to the United States so far. Do you think I can go over on ESTA to set it up? And generally speaking, as long as you haven't been here too much, then the answer is going to be yes. And you would let them know at the airport you're here to research and potentially set up an E2 business.
Perfect, thank you. The second question, can my spouse and kids come with me?
Yes, the answer is yes to both. Spouses can be with you as long as you are here on the visa. Children that are unmarried and under the age of 21 are welcome to attend school anywhere they want and are welcome to be here with you. The day they either A, get married, or B, turn 21, they will need to figure something else out. Most kids who age out versus getting married out, which is most kids, frankly, are usually in college at that time. So usually they will apply for an F1 visa, which is the student visa, to continue their studies. However, a day is going to come that they graduate, and at that point, they're going to have to figure out what's next for them.
Fantastic. Last question. Are there any limitations on the type of businesses that you can open with these visas?
No, well, I shouldn't say no, but very few. The limitations are they must be legal. The business must be for profit, so no kind of nonprofit type organizations, and they must offer a good or service. So again, we kind of talked about that. It's not about like, oh, I bought a ton of stock, or, oh, I bought this duplex and I'm going to rent it out. Those are not businesses, but anything that is legal, for profit, and offers a good or service, that's totally fine.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Angie. I'm sure I speak on behalf of our chamber, our live streamers, and the companies viewing the recorded webinar after today when I say thank you for your time and expertise. That was incredibly instructive and will certainly help our companies make informed decisions when expanding to the US. To our viewers, please feel free to reach out to Angie directly should you have any further questions about visas. Otherwise, if you're ready to take the next steps to expand to Irvine, Southern California, please reach out to Linda DeMario, EVP of the Greater Irvine Chamber, at the listed email on this slide. We're here as a resource and an ally for you in your expansion process and can connect you with the experts, partners, and resources you need. So don't hesitate to send us a quick email. I urge you to check out our next webinar installment next Tuesday, April 28th at 5 p.m. London time, and join Irvine Gateway expert Brian Montes of Scalosity Works on the continued disruption of HR trends for the new normal, where he will be discussing the top 2020 US workforce trends and how they will be reshaped in a post-pandemic world. So with that, please block your calendars, keep an eye out for the registration link, and we'll see you there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, everybody.